Really, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
That's why it's really important to have a plan. Have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this DJ?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so where you can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
And we are live. Welcome, 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 you filthy degenerates, to another episode of the Degen Roundtable. What is it? It's been a whole 16 hours since we went live. Long time no see. But if you can see, we have a panel of guests. Some faces you might recognize. Some of them, they haven't been here for a while, but glad that they could jump on. First and foremost, sitting in the co-host seat, our very mysterious Ninja, software developer slash GameFi ninja. Tracker, how you been, brother?
Doing good, man. Just enjoying today. It's looking like really nice for everybody. You guys should be pretty psyched about what's happening here. And I think and we're going to get into it, Jay. You're going to probably break it down, show how much there's more to come. It looks like it's feeding pretty good.
Absolutely. Josh, how was your vacation, my friend? Glad you could make it on to a live stream with us, man.
Yeah, vacation was good. I milked every last minute of it up until this morning. Went into work, got out of a work meeting, took a look at my phone, and the next thing I know, I was like, oh shit, we are green across the board, man. So but yeah, vacation was good, a lot of fun. Got to de-stress, relax. So it was fun. But yeah, you guys were crushing it while I was gone, so it was awesome to see.
Yeah, man, but we did certainly miss you and your input. So glad to have you back on the panel, giving us your knowledge and your insight. And then last but not least, as Nate would say, an almost shirtless Dace. How you doing, brother? Glad to have you on the live stream with us. It's been a while. What you been up to?
Semi-shirtless. Man, I've been very busy running my business and running our Telegram Tuesday calls in the chat. Trying to keep a tap up on the market. I know a lot of cool things have been going on in the chat with the Forge as well, which has been cool to watch. I've been watching you guys on stream on YouTube, so I'm happy I could hop on here on the stream with you guys.
Well, like I said about Josh and Tracker, glad to have you here. Join us on the live, brother. We missed you. So if you guys have been paying attention to what's happening on the markets, we are all lights are green for crypto. It's funny because we left off yesterday's episode. I left the gang with a little note saying that next week is going to be very interesting for crypto. And lo and behold, the market did not wait. As soon as the market opened, we had a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a misdirection. But my goodness, Bitcoin punched through $53,000 with a freaking vengeance. And so I want to share with you guys a little meme because I played this last Sunday. And so far, it's Ethereum that's been taking the reins. Right? Bitcoin has been crabbing sideways and a little bit down, but Ethereum has been pumping to the upside. But it seems like Bitcoin has finally woken up. And so if I could share my screen here with you guys really quickly, you'll remember this because I played it 2 Sundays ago. This is now the market once Bitcoin has woken up. So looks like they're having a lot of fun over there at Communist China. Looks like a fun little classroom.
That is. What class is that? That's what I want to. I want to take that class.
Absolutely, I certainly do. That looks like a fun time there in one of the CCP classrooms. But yeah, that's a little bit more reflective of what's going on in the market currently, because Bitcoin has finally started to wake up, and it's taken the rest of the market with it. I think it's fairly obvious to everybody that when Ethereum is pumping, we get a little bit of upside momentum to the altcoins, but things don't really get going unless Bitcoin is following suit. It reminds me, I'm sure you guys have seen the meme of Usain Bolt when he was still racing, where he's just passing everybody by, and then once he passes the last dude, he's looking back, smiling with the baton in his hands. That's been Ethereum for the past few weeks, while Bitcoin is going sideways. But it's nice to finally see Big Daddy Bitcoin wake up and take the reins and take the rest of the altcoin market with it as well. So the reason why I wanted to get on the stream with the fellas and with the group is because I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update of what we can potentially expect over the latter half of this current 60-day cycle. Because like I said, all lights are green. Ethereum has a right translated cycle. Bitcoin is now on a right translated 60-day cycle. And we can expect on average for prices to keep running to the upside for anywhere between 1 to an extra 3 weeks, all the way up into day 50, before we finally start coming down into a dip on the end of that 60-day cycle. I mentioned it here before. The question isn't whether we're going to get a dip or not. The question is, what is the severity of that dip? And because we have a right translated cycle for Bitcoin and Ethereum, it seems like the bears aren't going to get their wishes. Although I will give the bears their due, as always, and give you the potential downsides, even the most bearish downsides that we can see from over the next few weeks. And then obviously we're going to give you the super duper bullish case. But before we head into the charts, I want to say hi to the people joining us in the chat. I know it's in the middle of the day for a lot of folks, so glad that you could jump in and spend a bit of time with us. Nate the Great and and Nate the Ascending Man, our fellow DGen Roundtable team member, double Nate in the chat first and foremost. Vets in Crypto, glad to see you here, brother. Megan Mulcair, hello to you, my dear, as well. Niles, yeah, he's you know what, Dace has been on stream a couple of times, but he's usually in the background working. This man takes care of business first and foremost, but he's always working in the background, providing value for us and the rest of the team, even though you guys don't see him as much. Don't sleep on him, man, because he's working on a lot of things. Yeah. So it looks like that's it for the folks in the chat. So before I go into the charts here, can we get some insight from our panel here before I start rambling about what their current thoughts are on what's going on in the market and where we might be headed? How about Tracker? Let's start with you, brother.
All right. Well, it seems like, you can come out with a theory and then there's always something that throws you a wrench that changes the theory, right? I still think, obviously that the big 800-pound gorilla is still going to be the halvening, and until proven otherwise, we always dump after the halvening. I mean, it's happened the last three cycles. So the question is, do we have a run up, which I think everybody's hoping we get this run up, and we want Ethereum to flip BTC. That's what we really want. It's why I don't really want BTC really pumping at all. Honestly, I really want Ethereum to pump, because that's going to lead into the Bitcoin dominance to go down. That should then feed into a nice altcoin rally that we're all hoping to see going into sometime before that halvening. Because if we run up going into that halvening, it's just more of a narrative to dump as the halvening happens, thus sell the news event. Because if everyone's already locking ahead nice gains, they're going to try locking that in because they're thinking the same thing. Mostly everybody is. So you should get a dump. Now, how severe the dump, who knows? But then, typically we end up going sideways or down, about 30, 35%, 40%-ish drops in BTC value. And then we kind of crab sideways for, anywhere between 5-6 months before we run back up to the next actual run up. At least that's normally what's happened. Now, the big caveat is we've got the traditional markets that are been buying up the coins who can manipulate prices. So it's tough to say what's going to transpire. But as of now, we're like textbook so far in going into the halvening. Ethereum is starting to take a little bit of the torch. It's been outperforming BTC since the beginning of the year. Hopefully that continues, and then we do get that run up. So it's hard to look forward past the halvening. I would just say if we get a nice solid run up going into the halvening, I would absolutely be locking in some profits and getting some dry powder to prepare for a pullback. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, good insight there, Tracker, because that's actually a little bit of what we were going to talk about today. At least for myself, but I'm sure the rest of the team can give their own thoughts and insight on this. But there is certainly a potential for profit taking at the very tail end of this 60-day cycle in preparation for that inevitable dip that we get before and after the halving, right? So with you on that for sure. Josh, how about you, brother? What are your thoughts on the current state of the market, and what do you think we can expect?
Dude, I'm at a loss for words right now. Like, we are only 30% away from Bitcoin all-time high territory. Like, we're 30% away and we haven't halved yet. And especially with the news that just came out that MicroStrategy's X account was compromised and we get a surge off of that. I mean, I don't know, man. I really don't know. Obviously, green candles is awesome. It's just, I can't diagnose it, man. And I mean, you know, I'm super analytically based. This is a absolute bull season right now, and I don't know, man. I'm sort of at a loss for words. I was expecting a pullback, I guess. And I mean, we could still get somewhat of a pullback. You know, this could die out in a matter of 2 or 3 hours, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be that there's still some momentum gathering and stuff. So, yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know. I have no idea. And I don't know if we've been this bullish pre-halvening. And it's going to be interesting to see how this thing's going to play out. So I'm along for the ride, man.
Oh, FYI, BTC just hit 54,000.
Yeah, I see here in my charts. I'm taking a look at it.
So I have the ETH BTC chart pulled up, and I saw like ETH took 0.016, and now it's taking a dive back down, and Bitcoin is ripping up again. So the longer we can sort of play right at that level, you can just continue to build that bullish pressure, right? That is like Josh was saying, according to the numbers and time from happening, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind right now is you think of the correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin. Well, the Dow and the S&P are both red today. Now, they're not like super red. They're maybe, a couple points in the red. But nonetheless, there's definitely some decorrelation from the stock markets today. And it's just, I don't know. I figured with the news coming out about MicroStrategies and just some other stuff going on, the super bullish first half of the right translated cycle that we're now in, because it's a right translated cycle now because we got a new cycle high. So, it'll be, I don't know, man. It's interesting.
It's funny that you mentioned MicroStrategy, because it seems like that didn't faze Mr. Saylor or his company at all. After the news broke out that the X account had hacked, the perpetrator, I think it was around $440,000 that they were able to scam people out of. But come on, guys, let's get that 2-factor authentication up there if you don't already have it. But Michael Saylor, like it was nothing, brushed it off and said, you know what, I'm going to buy another 3,000 Bitcoin, because that's exactly what happened right after. Tracker, did you have something?
Yeah, I will say this, though. The traditional markets are hitting all-time highs. They're extremely frothy, right? So traditional markets are going to treat crypto as risk on. That's just how their nature. That's how they're using it, right? So I think as long as, personally, I would like the market, the overall global market, S&P and Dow, stop freaking going up. That's just more froth. Dude, calm down and just go sideways. That's all I'm asking. Just go sideways or trade in this nice little top channel would be ideal. Calm down. I would like to see that first off. And another thing, so I watch the traditional, grayscale ETFs, because that's where a lot of traditional people are flocking to. GBDC was the grayscale ETF that had all the attention going into it. Ironically, even though ETH, now the ETF, ETHE, which is the traditional grayscale ETF, that thing is still outperforming the GBTC ETF today, even though GBT's price is up higher. So money is still flocking into the ETH ETF, because right now the GBTC is up 6% on the day, and the ETH is up, at one point it was up 9%. Right now it's up 8.5%. So I guess what I'm saying is folks are still flocking into the Ethereum play. Traditional markets are towards, I know they're talking that spot ETF and whatnot, but I still think it's a traditional, people are rotating, looking for that value, and they know ETH has lagged. Even with the move today, I just want to take a look at it real quick. I've been watching this. Even today, I mean, BTC is up 27% since January 1st. The ETH is up 38%. So still outperforming the BTC, but ETH is still roughly about 62% behind the BTC move since January 1st of 2023. This is just some side notes I'd like to add.
Yeah, brother. It's funny that you mentioned Grayscale and the current outperformance of the ETH futures that they it's not a futures, it's their it's their version of the GBTC, but Ethereum, right? And during yesterday's show, we actually had a clip of the Grayscale CEO, Mr. Sonnenschein, and he was speaking on Squawk Box, and he was talking about exactly how not just the company, but how their clients are extremely bullish for the Ethereum spot ETF, because they've seen great success with the Bitcoin ETFs, correct? And so according to him, during that show, he said that our customers are asking us, where else can we put our capital? And there's demand for Ethereum ETFs. And he even mentioned that some of their clients have taken a sector-based approach to their investments in crypto, which means they're not just looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum now. These people are looking at different sectors in crypto, whether it's GameFi, GambleFi, AI, all of the different sectors that we talk about here regularly on the show. It seems like there is now increased demands, at least according to Sonnenschein and his clients, that now they are looking at a very sector-based approach to the market when it comes to investing, not just looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum. So bullish indeed, man. Josh, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something, brother?
Yeah, we're also on the verge of another government shutdown March 1st. So
Because of the budget, right?
Yeah, because they passed at the last second at the end of 2023. They gained Republican support to at least kick the can down the road till March. Well, they're up against it again. And, typically in the past, uncertainty when it comes to government shutdown has typically led to a little bit of turmoil in the markets. And we're getting closer. And, Bitcoin, as we speak right now, is up 4.87%. And, yeah, man. It's interesting. What do you make of it? Well, what are your thoughts on it, Jay?
Well, before we get into the technicals here, I want to go ahead and say hi to a few more folks rolling into the chat. Mr. Chad Donner Schwans. Alexis, he says hi to Dace. Yeah, I know we haven't seen Dace here in a while. Mr. Dre Sims, a regular in the Telegram chat. Welcome, sir. Good to see you. And then Mr. Benny Blanco from the Bronx. Good to have you join us here, my friend. And it seems like the rest of the people in the chats are also very bullish for crypto as a whole. So I know Josh mentioned earlier that he can't really make any heads or tails about what's going on in the market because he's a very technical guy, right? He's not really somebody who goes off of emotions. Tracker, I think we're getting some background noise from you, brother. So if you could go ahead and go on mute when you're not speaking. There we go. Wonderful. So hopefully what I show you guys here when it comes to the charts will give the guys out there like Josh some peace of mind, because the technicals definitely reflect what's happening out there in the market. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you folks for Bitcoin. So let me know if you guys can see the screen right now, and we will dive into the technical analysis. Can you folks see that?
We got you.
Cool, wonderful. So Josh alluded to it earlier, but we have a new high here at day 34 of the current 60-day cycle, which means, like I mentioned, we can expect price to keep running anywhere between 1 to 3 more weeks. Bitcoin looking for new highs during that time. And so if we take our time-based tool here and run it up all the way up until day 50, that coincides with this other time frame that I have been mentioning over the past few weeks. If you can see here, I have this BTC halving marker at April 15th because a lot of estimates put the halving at around mid-April, so April 15th to early May. And on average, the dip that we see before the halving occurs about 35 days prior. And so the end of our right translated cycle happens to overlap with the time period where we can expect to see the dip occurring, right? If we pull this all the way up into day 60, that falls in line within that time frame, right? And so the only difference now is because we are looking at a right translated cycle, that any dip that goes into the halving is probably going to be severely muted. But like I mentioned, we always give both the bears and the bulls their due. And so let me give the bears their due first. And I'm going to give you guys some targets if this pattern has indeed already played out, right? And we have this 5-wave impulsive movement to the upside. What are the potential prices that we can expect to the downside? Well, very simple. If we take a fib retracement from our swing low to our current high of $54,000, give or take, right? The wave 2, right, because this is a wave 1 to a smaller degree, and the larger Elliott wave move is a wave 3, right? So we're looking at a smaller degree in terms of Elliott wave movements here. We can expect a wave 2 to retrace anywhere between this area of the 0.382 fib all the way down to 0.786. More commonly, steep moves within the wave 2 occur between the 0.5 and the 0.786 fib. That puts us anywhere between $48,351 for Bitcoin and as low as $41,889. Now, the bears might be expecting, okay, because we are in a local wave 2, that the move is going to be very steep. However, I always like to point out that you also have to consider where we are in the broader Elliott wave movement. And we are, like I said, in the macro wave 3, which means what? That your moves to the downside are going to be muted and less often. And so I would not be surprised that if we get a move that retraces very shallowly during this wave 2, only up to the 0.382 level here at 48,351, right? We have the fib levels there. We also have some horizontals there serving as support. Right here, we have a prior cycle high, which will serve as support. Now, if we were to retrace a lot deeper, I know the bears, so I'm going to give you a super bullish scenario after this one. A super bearish scenario after this one. But if this pattern here is indeed an impulsive wave to the upside, and which is looking like it is an impulsive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waiting to come in to the upside, then I don't expect Bitcoin to drop anywhere below $38,467 until the next bear market. And you can quote me on that. Once again, because this is looking like an impulsive wave to the upside and not a corrective structure, I don't expect Bitcoin to fall anywhere below 38,500, let's call it 38,500 flat, until our very next bear market. Okay? Quote me on that. And the reason being, if we did move past below that, it would invalidate this bullish pattern, right? This 5-wave impulse to the upside. It would invalidate the next bull movement up. The reason why I don't think that's going to happen is because the bears have to contend with all of this prior support that we have been forming over the past few months. I mean, for God's sakes, they can't even push the damn price down below $50,000. Are we really expecting them to push price below $40,000 once again? I personally don't think that they can. However, like I said, the bears are going to be given their due. So, if we look at our super bearish scenario, right, you can look at this as a 1. So let me get my Elliott wave drawing tool here, right? So ideally, the pattern is as follows. We have a wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already in, and then we have an ABC wave 2, and then the next impulse of this wave 3, right? However, once again, giving the bears their due, what we could have here is a wave 5 waiting to come in. Here's our wave 4 at 38.5, and there's our wave 3. which means if we were to take that same fib retracement, assuming that your wave 5 is in here at $54,000, same rules apply here. We can expect a steep correction of this wave 2 to fall anywhere between this 0.5 fib and this 0.786, which lands us to what a lot of people are, well, the bears that are left in the market, of this $31,000 Bitcoin, which is your 0.786 fib, which also lines up pretty damn well with a lot of horizontal support here. You can see here multiple cycle highs, and what do we always say? One cycle highs have been retaken and price falls back down towards them. They are going to serve as significant support for price to be held up at those levels. And so if we were to give the bears their due and something really, really, really terrible happened in the market, war, for example, then you can expect this wave 2 to play out like it usually does, a very steep correction in magnitude, and expect price to come down anywhere between this 0.5 fib, which is at $40,000, and this 0.786 fib at $31,077, right? So this right here is your super bearish scenario. I don't fall into this camp. I think the bears are going to have one hell of a time just trying to push Bitcoin back down below $50,000. They've been trying over the past few weeks, no success. And so I don't think they're going to have a prayer when it comes to pushing the price back down all the way to $30,000. I just don't think it's going to happen, right? But like I said, we always have to give the bears their due. And so I'm going to give you the super bearish scenario so that you can make some plans just in case it happens, right? And once again, the target to look out for if that was going to play out, look for price to retrace below this area. Let me give you the exact number. If the super bearish scenario were to play out, your confirmation would be if price broke down below $38,505 exact. That is the only way this pattern right here becomes invalidated. All right. So keep an eye out for that target. All right. If price breaks below $38,505 exact, then the super bearish scenario once again is in play. But a more conservative approach is look for price to retrace anywhere between, once again, to give you folks a target, anywhere between $48,500 and $42,000 at the lowest. So those are your bearish targets. Now, let's move on to our bullish scenario. And why am I so bullish during this move? So I'm going to go down here to very degenerate time frames because I need you guys to see the reason why I'm bullish in this particular scenario. And it has to do with the Elliott wave count. Okay. So a few weeks ago, I gave the team this particular scenario. That if we were still in a corrective pattern, what will happen? It means that we can either do a zigzag, that was invalidated, and so we were left with flat corrective patterns or something more complicated, right? And the first pattern that I drew out was that of a flat. However, since we extended past where your A wave started, the two flat patterns remaining that we were playing with was this. Oh, that's not it. Here we go. The two remaining patterns that we were playing with was either an irregular or an expanding flat pattern, right? The only difference between your expanding and your irregular is your irregular, right? Your C wave terminates before, slightly before where your A wave stopped, right? And in an expanding flat pattern, your C wave extends below where your A wave terminated, which is where we got the targets that I provided in our Telegram chat of a correction down to the 618 area of $36,950, or if it was an irregular flat of $42,844, right? Now, why do I think this flat pattern has now been invalidated? Once again, this is why it's important to go down to these degenerate time frames, because you can analyze the sub-wave count for your Elliott wave sequence, right? For flat patterns, what you're looking for a sub-wave count is a 3-wave move for your A 3-wave move for your B, and then finally a 5-wave impulsive move to the downside. What do we have here? We have something that looks like a 1, 2, 3, but this move here, this does not look corrective. This now looks impulsive because we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 already in. That's a bull flag, by the way. This right here, that's a bull flag. And 5 waiting to come in. So because your subwave counts have now moved from 3 to 5, this count has now invalidated our flat patterns, which is why I'm leaning much more heavily now to a bullish scenario for Bitcoin. Continuation of this trend during the latter half of this 60-day cycle before we head down and correct. So what are our potential targets? Well, very easy. You see this horizontal band of resistance that I've drawn out here? These are our potential areas of targets, right? If you can see here, Bitcoin has been trading between these two channels. And so right now it's hitting resistance at the upper band of that channel. Now, I mentioned this in the chat. I think the next target for Bitcoin is going to be right here at around $55,000. The reason being is because we have psychological resistance, right? People like to trade whole numbers. So $55,000 is going to be a psychological resistance. And then if you look a little bit further back here, right? If we pull the daily chart a little bit further back to our prior all-time highs, you can see that 55,000, this range here from 55,000 to 60,000 is really the last bastion of resistance that the bears can put up before we basically have nothing left in terms of resistance on our way to our next all-time highs, right? So you have horizontals here and 55,000 as a psychological number serving as resistance where people might start taking profits. However, if the bulls manage to punch price all the way up into and beyond $55,000, the next reasonable area to consider before hitting resistance would be, I also mentioned this in the chat, if we take a fib from our all-time high to our bear market low, you can see that the next level, the next major level in terms of fibs is this 0.786 at $57,878. So once again, if the bulls manage to punch through 55K, then expect 57.8 to be your next level of resistance before you see some heavy profit taking take place. Okay? And lastly, remove this and clean that up. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let me remove the fib there and give you guys one more fib pull to give you some confluence. If we do a fib extension from the start of the move to the top of our wave 1, bottom of our wave 2, look at where the 2618 level is around, right? It's around that $59,000 area, which also lines up with that 0.786 fib we pulled from our all-time highs to our bear market lows, right? So you have a ton of confluence around that price. Okay, so those are your targets for a bullish scenario, and it seems like price wants to keep heading to the upside. Here's another thing why I don't think we are finished with this move. Once again, going down to the 4-hour time frame. Okay, this is your corrective wave 4, A, B, C, flat pattern, classic. Your invalidation for this impulse move would have been below 5,519. What does this look like? This looks like a wave 1, 2, 3. So we still have a 3 yet to come in, 4 yet to come in, and 5 yet to come in. So this is even more confirmation, right, on a smaller degree that this move has a lot more steam behind it. So don't expect Bitcoin to start losing steam around this $54,000 area, right? We have a 1, 2, 3 looking to come in, 4, and then 5. Look for this wave 5 to head anywhere between 55K to around 59. because of the aforementioned levels of resistance. So before I move on to Ethereum and anything else, I want to go ahead and throw it to the panel. What are you guys seeing on your charts? What do you think about this analysis? Give me your thoughts, folks.
So first of all, let's get the likes up on the video for this man putting in the work, Agent J. Thank you as always. Killer job.
Hell yeah.
In the business, man. What I would say is, it sounds to me from the fib that you pulled, from the micro, from the smaller level time frame waves you have coming in, combined with put over the top, like 60K has to be the last psychological level, right? I mean, I feel like anything after 60, and people feel like we're pretty much there, right? So I think that 59K being sort of a top for this 60-day cycle would make a lot of sense. It would coincide with we would be able to find the dip, right? Like Josh was saying, I don't know when we're going to be pulling back. We would sort of target that, not in time, but at least in price. That it looks like 60K is going to be the barrier in my mind.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, great job, Jay. That was a great breakdown. Really explained it thoroughly. I would say it's funny. I mean, well, hell, we may hit 55 in the stream right now. I mean, it just keeps climbing. So I guess, you were saying what kind of bear stuff could we have into it? I agree. I don't see us pulling back right now to those extreme levels. Potentially, going into maybe the tail end closer to the halvening, or maybe after the halvening, I could see prices pulling back down to those levels and trying to test those potentially, certainly. And some of the FUD that would be coming in would be basically, like bank funding program ending in March, right? You're going to have banks collapsing, all that fun stuff, creating that FUD out there for everybody. Market probably could cool off because of that. Thus, it trickles into people taking profits in the short term. So it all feels like it's a kind of aligning that makes sense. So I like what I'm seeing from your technicals and from the macros, and also just on the sheer fact, if you've been in this market since, if you're all in, you've been all in since like Q4 of 2022 or early of last year. I mean, you're starting to get a little greedy now. I feel like nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, managing your risk basically here, right? If you're all in, you're getting these run-ups, people seem to get euphoric and just start popping champagne, having fun, but don't get too reckless. Take some profits if you get up here. I'm not saying you got to unload the entire portfolio. I mean, I know we like to say not financial advice, but me personally, I'd probably trim off about 20% of the portfolio just to be on the safe side, just to have a little bit of protection in case things give you that opportunity. I mean, that's just proper risk management. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to add, Jay, was it's pretty funny when you were talking about a GBDC, how people are like, everybody's looking for more exposure into other areas. Is it safe to say that GBDC is the gateway drug to crypto now?
I don't. So because they are the first mover, they have the first mover advantage, right? But you can't ignore BlackRock, and you can't ignore the amount of noise that they're making. Obviously, Grayscale is very present in this space, so they're definitely going to be one of the top contenders, but yet to be determined, man, because now that Larry Fink and his company are in the race, who knows, man? It's like you were imagine this. Imagine if you were playing a sport, like let's say the NBA, right? And you were the number one guy on your team. Let's say it's Scottie Pippen, and you were just crushing everybody because you had that first mover advantage. But then Michael Jordan comes in, right? Larry Fink and BlackRock, they're the Michael Jordans of this space. And so yet to be determined whether Grayscale is going to keep the lead or they're going to lose the lead. I wish I had the Halo soundbite. Lose the lead to BlackRock. So, but yeah, Grayscale definitely has a good chance, brother.
Yeah,
because first mover, man.
But what I was trying to allude to was, I think a better way of putting it was the spot Bitcoin ETFs are the gateway drug to crypto. Thus, everybody's getting a taste of how good it is. Now they're trying to flock into that. Now they're going to look, hey, what else can I get? Oh, these are the only ETFs I can choose from. Okay, well then how do I actually get into crypto now? So that's what I was referring to, though. But yeah,
Gotcha.
Too.
Yes, the spots definitely, for sure. You could see if you track the inflows of spots, they haven't really slowed down, right? And so yes, however, what I also consider is the fees that Grayscale has. So yes, they do have first mover advantage, but you also have to consider, where are people going to park their money? Most likely, they're going to go park their money where there's less fees. So that's just my thoughts on it, right? But obviously that's one variable to consider. But I mean, I'm a cheap bastard. If I'm gonna invest in Grayscale, I'm like, man, your fees are way too high. I'm gonna go with BlackRock and somebody else. But Josh, did you have anything to add to the analysis, bro? Thoughts, concerns, comments?
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple different things right now. It's interesting how similar this cycle is starting to look to the 2017 cycle, just in terms of the momentum indicators. When you take a look at like the RSI, how it compared to price points, stuff like that. And there's something else that I was thinking of, because I'm taking a look at this right now. Do you guys think? Well, I'll pose this question afterwards. So I'm gonna write down this question that I have for you guys because it's not really on topic, but it's a good question to ask. But we are seeing a lot of similarities between the 2017 bull cycle when it comes to price behavior and the RSI and the MACD and stuff like that. It's just it's happening at such a more accelerated time pattern right now. And I think the Bitcoin spot ETFs, that I think that anticipation and how the pricing is played out has played a lot into that. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. And like I said, I'm looking at the Pi cycle top indicator. I'm looking at the terminal price, and it's like, dude, we have so much more room to run too. It's insane. Like when you look at the macro, we have so much more room to run. So that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, dude, coming off of vacation mode until like 7 o'clock this morning, and then, jumping in and doing this stuff. So I might not have the best analysis right now because I'm still grinding back into it. But I do have a good question for you guys when we sort of open it up.
Yeah, for sure. Dace, did you have something, brother? Go ahead.
Just real quickly, when you were talking about a 38.5 max bear level, what Tracker said is something that popped into my mind as well, in terms of we've heard all these people. If you follow the other influencers and YouTubers about crypto, you hear a lot about the institutional buy pressure. We've been hearing about that for like a year, 6 months, right? The ETF institutional buy pressure. I think it's going to reduce the amount of drop we can see in Bitcoin. I think because you've got that mainline demand that's now plugged in and draining supply, it's only so far down it can dip. And so, also because there's competition between those ETFs, I think that's going to keep there from being, I think it just sets a higher floor in terms of your bear case. That's just me.
It's a game of chicken. I was saying it's a game of chicken, right? With the institutions. It's a good point. Dancy, you put out there, man. Because I mean, you think about it. They all want to take profits, but at the same time, they want to hodl and keep as much crypto as they can. So who's gonna sell first?
That's just it. And like, there will be a race. Like, you know what I mean? At this point, we know the price point that they got in at, that the ETFs were turned on at. We know that number. And so, how far can we expect it to go below that number, knowing what we think they know about the market in terms of their preparation time, in terms of how they approach things, how they've mapped it out? I don't know how low we can expect BTC to close a week below the ETF launch number, kind of ever again. I mean, because of the relative size of the other assets and the other things that they have under management, combined with their holistic approach and how they're viewing the market, I don't see it ever really happening. That's just me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you on that one too. Plus, also, Bitcoin is a much, it's not a trade. People need to figure it. People who aren't familiar with the cryptocurrencies, how it's all the battles going on across all the government institutions and the powers that be that are trying to control all this. Everyone's trying to create their own GBDC, and I know it's been talked about. So a lot of other good influencers have broken this down, and it's true. Nobody's going to trust each other. No one's trusting nobody. China's not trusting us. We're not trusting China, and vice versa. And across the board, no one trusts anybody. So the one thing they can trust, it's unbiased, is Bitcoin. So who's going to sell Bitcoin knowing that potentially could be the game changer? So I almost feel like everyone's going to try to hold as much as they can. So it could, if anything, we could get a melt up just because of that. They're looking at it like, we don't even care what the price is. We're just looking at it because we have to keep control. So yeah, it's very interesting how that's going to play out, but there's a lot of dynamics that are playing in the background on that for sure.
Yeah. Dace made a very good point there, right? Because people know exactly where the entry point was for a lot of folks in terms of the spot ETFs for Bitcoin, then that could potentially help hold the price up, right? And we've mentioned this a few times. You have to realize that yes, a lot of people are coming into the market now. These asset managers are accumulating a lot, and yes, you increase the probabilities that they're going to have more control of the supply, and also their ability to dump becomes greater once they have more of the supply. However, you also have to consider the fact that you look at the on-chain data, the majority of supply of Bitcoin is being held within the hands of people who have not moved their damn Bitcoin anywhere between 6 months to a year. So you have to consider that, right? And also, you mentioned it a few times. There's still people sitting in the sidelines. Remember, when people are holding cash, once that price goes up, their floor entry point also goes up. The people who are hoping for $10,000 Bitcoin have probably moved their entry points up when it crossed 30 to 20. The people who are hoping for 30 have probably moved their entry points from 30 up to 40, if we see that, right? So the people who are still holding capital on the sidelines, if you see right now, right, a move to 40,000 is going to be over a 20% drop, like a 25% drop, considering where we're at now. We're at 54,426 for Bitcoin. That's over a 25% drop. You think people are not going to take the opportunity if you have a considerable amount of capital sitting on the sidelines to buy up that price? Of course they are. Right? So it's like it's put another feather in the cap for the bulls, right? Because even the people who are still bearish waiting for a dip, they're no longer hoping for $10,000 Bitcoin. They're no longer hoping for $20,000 or $30,000 Bitcoin. They'll probably take 50, 45, 40. Right? So this is precisely the reason why I'm leaning so heavily on the bullish scenario for Bitcoin. You have to take a holistic approach, like they said, right? It's a holistic view of the market. You can't just be watching like one or two indicators. There are people that I like. There's this guy. He's an absolute Chad Elliott wave analyst, right? He's always spot on, but he doesn't take into consideration the 60-day cycles. He doesn't take into consideration the 40-day cycles. The 4-year cycle. I was speaking about this with the rest of our team. This guy still has a potential target back down to $3,000 Bitcoin. Can you imagine that? $3,000 within the context of a 4-year cycle? That's not happening, right? Which is why it's important to take a holistic approach when you're making an analysis in the market, not just with the technicals, right? But with the fundamentals, the sentiment out there, the on-chain data, because otherwise you're going to make predictions like that, bro. And you might be caught with your pants down. So before
Jay,
we move on, go ahead, brother.
Sorry, go ahead. No. Oh, I was going to ask you, but this isn't the time to do it. I was going to ask you how this is going to play into your technical analysis, considering 55 could be the recent top in the wave 3, wave 5 to come, but there's not that much upside to Bitcoin in that range from 55 to 58. Does that mean that, are we setting up for, Ethereum to have its, lead into the altcoin seasoning for that pre run up before the dump? I was curious to get everyone's take on that piece.
Well, regarding where we could potentially take profits and if Ethereum is going to lead the run up, to be honest, I think now that they're basically in lockstep once again with each other, I think Ethereum is going to take a step back and start following Bitcoin again. So I mentioned this to the chat several times, but when I consider where I take profits, I have to wait for a range to form. I was speaking with a client a few weeks ago, and he asked me when this move started. He was like, "Look, in your opinion, would this be an area where you start taking a little bit off the table?" And I told him, "Look, you have green candle after green candle after green candle. I personally, and this is why what I would suggest, this is my opinion, you do not make a move until you see a range forming." And what happened? We were ranging sideways for a few weeks, and I gave him both the bullish and bearish scenarios. I gave him what are the targets, how this pattern is going to be invalidated, and you can reference back to our Telegram chat, man. The very last update that I gave was my bullish scenario. And I was like, here's where it becomes invalidated. And it didn't. And we went to the upside, right? And so same techniques here. I'm going to wait for a range to form, right? That wave 3 to a smaller degree, still looking for a top. And that means we still have a 4 and 5 until I see a range start to form, until I see rejection at multiple levels, until I see this structure play out. I'm going to sit tight. All right, that's my investment thesis. It's how I've been able to, preserve my capital, to take profits at good times, to not FOMO. Right, so you stick with your investment thesis. Right, but to answer your question, in regards to Ethereum, I think Ethereum is now back in lockstep with Bitcoin. So I think they're going to start dipping into the halving once we get to the tail end of our 60-day cycle. I don't think Ethereum is going to run too far up higher than Bitcoin. Once again, too close to the halving, right? If anything, what I expect from Ethereum to do is either maintain its ratio, right, with its Bitcoin pair, which means it's going to move sideways. I don't expect it to gain significantly against that pair, but I certainly don't expect it to go back down and bleed against it heavily like it was doing all of 2023. So I hope that answers your question. I know I can ramble on at times, but I try to give as much context as I possibly can. Josh, Dace, did you have any thoughts on that? What a Tracker's question, I mean?
I do not. Dace, if you do, go ahead.
I don't think so. Tracker, hit me again with the cliff notes, brother. I was following Jay a bit and got distracted.
Oh, sorry. What I was basically implying was, when do you think altcoin season could kick in? Pre-altcoin season, before we go into the halving and dump. And then with his analysis he laid out, do we think that could form? And what he's saying is that he thinks that Ethereum could take the backseat again and go lockstep with Bitcoin. But I agree with what Jay said. Jay was like, let the patterns form, because it's no need to make any rash decisions right now, because you're in this wave 3, right? Wait for the 4, wait for the 5. That's going to tell you where your resistances are going to be, and then where you're most likely going to have a chance to exit if you are looking to exit. And then with your potential downsides, that's where your areas you can start DCAing in back in, is essentially what he's saying, which I hear you, man. No need to make any judgment calls or any jump on anything. Let's wait for it to show its hand first.
So I guess what I would ask in response, or to that perspective, is, because what I've been watching for that is the ETH BTC super trend. Sami pulls it up, and I think that ratio on a weekly time frame says a lot when you compare it back to the timeline of the last alt season, the last Ethereum top, things like that. So I'm curious about how much that affects, when the right time to take profits is, in terms of like how high we think an Ethereum top can be, and its timing with the BTC cycle. Like, we have the previous cycles and how they relate to BTC, but we don't have what we don't know is how ETH is going to act with BTC running this hot this soon, this far out before the happening. And so I'm really watching the relationship between ETH and BTC close, because it looks like if BTC is behaving slightly different and on a slightly different time frame, look to see if ETH follows suit or doesn't, right? If ETH starts to pick up, if we see ETH ETF announcement or any progress on that front, or even legislative clarity when it comes to the Coinbase case, or we're going to see some other news event, I think that's going to let us know, hey, this early strong move from BTC we're seeing with relationship to its timing to the halving is going to translate all the way down. We're yet to see how that's going to play out. I just checked it, and it's an interesting chart if you chart it even on the past few days, because we've seen Ethereum show some strength, and now BTC is running back again. And so again, like you said, I also can ramble a little bit, but what I would say is, look, watching ETH's relationship to BTC is going to tell a lot in terms of your altcoin profits. We might see local USD value peaks, but still not see either others dominance or ETH BTC dominance get flipped. And so those are the real decision-making points where it's, hey, maybe size your exit. I'm not taking everything out, I'm taking a piece out. Those are where you can get into some of those more micromanaging positions and strategies if you want to. But I would be mindful of the ETH BTC ratio chart, is what I would say.
Something that you also have to keep in mind is that in prior cycles, the altcoin season may have already started at this point. But because there is so much news and so much new stuff this cycle, that the Bitcoin dominance is pretty much fluctuating between 52 and 53 right now because of the laggards that are trying to get in behind the Bitcoin spot ETF. We didn't have that in the past. And also, if you take a look at what was running on the news in 2019. At the very beginning of 2020, before the COVID-19 pandemic kicked off. And even back in 2017, you didn't see Bitcoin, you didn't see Ethereum prices on the CNBC sites, and you didn't see it on Fox Business and stuff like that. So this information is becoming more and more prevalent, and more people are paying attention. Plus, we just got the stamp of approval for major institutions that Bitcoin is now, it's donned the cloak of being respectable enough to have a spot ETF. So I think that there is still more focus on Bitcoin, but it's probably coming from lagging, where the money that would traditionally have already started to move into Ethereum at this point, it's sort of being counterbalanced by the money that's being chased behind Bitcoin. Does that make sense? It's just a theory. There's nothing that I have that says that that's the case. But when I think about it logically, that's what I'm thinking about. Is there is so much news, and there's, Bitcoin is in everyone's face more so now. And this isn't even compared to where I'm sure it's going to be next cycle and the cycle after that and all that stuff as adoption continues to grow. But just like, you're your youngest that you're ever going to be right now, Bitcoin right now has had more information put out on television and on Twitter and on YouTube, and there's growing sentiment towards it, as opposed to where it was in the past. So you're going to have more and more money running behind it. And we just may be at a pivotal point right now to where, because the smart money's starting to move into Ethereum right now, I can tell you that. Smart money is moving into Ethereum. They started moving into Ethereum the day that the spot ETFs went live. That's when money started flipping into Ethereum. It's just that you have a solid buy pressure from the spot Bitcoin ETFs that's keeping that Bitcoin dominance up. Plus, you have people that never trusted the market before that are starting to sort of dip their toes into it, that are like, okay, let me go ahead and follow behind Bitcoin.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to lean towards more is folks that are in any type of altcoins. Be careful, because if we go into that, when things do roll over, it's gonna be a bloodbath. So I'm trying to kind of front run it to make sure people know, give them a good indicator. And I think, what you guys have kind of articulated is there's no need to make any judgments. Let's wait to see what the resistance levels are, and let's see it play out. And it should start to scream at you when you need to start exiting before you get, your face ripped off, if we do have a nice pullback like we should get, post happening.
And, to kind of add on to what Josh and Dace mentioned earlier, right? Dace posed the question of how is ETH going to act when it comes to its ETH Bitcoin valuation, because Bitcoin is acting somewhat differently from prior cycles. You have this massive run up prior to the halving because of the inflows from the spot ETF and the bullish news around not just that, but the widespread adoption of not just Bitcoin in general, but crypto, right? And so how I would answer that question is, I think, so this is my personal opinion, but I think because of the mass adoption, because of the ETFs being in play now, I think that actually serves Bitcoin a lot better in maintaining dominance, at least until way after the halving, right? Because the inflows are going to go first and foremost to Bitcoin, which will increase that dominance. Right? I don't think Ethereum flips Bitcoin. The only way that I could possibly see this happening, right, is if people get really bullish during the approvals of the Ethereum ETF. I think it's a done deal. I think that come May, during the last approval deadline, I think Gary just passes it through. No fuss, no mas. I think that's probably the only way I could see Ethereum flipping Bitcoin in the short term. Otherwise, because of how bullish Bitcoin has been, because of the major institutional adoption, because of countries like, look at El Salvador, man. Look at Argentina, how bullish they are on Bitcoin, right? I think the majority of the inflows are going to go into Bitcoin, which means the dominance is going to creep slightly up. And I don't think Ethereum flips Bitcoin until further down along the line, or people get more overly bullish on the Ethereum ETFs than they are on the Bitcoin ETFs. Right. So that's my 2 cents on that pair in particular. But for sure, we're gonna get an altcoin run. All right, we're gonna get an altcoin run because Bitcoin is finally caught up. Ethereum is moving alongside it. It's gonna take the altcoin market with it, right? And so we already mentioned it a few times in this stream. Look for profit-taking opportunities during the latter half of this 60-day cycle around day 50 and wait for a time to enter back in. But don't get cute with your bags. 15, 20%, if you're super conservative, maybe even less, just to practice that skill, just so that you have some capital sitting on the side in the case that we do get that super bullish, super bearish scenario of price dropping back below 40,000. You give the bears their due, they get $30,000 Bitcoin, then you have some capital sitting on the side. Right? So small when it comes to trading, right? Just to practice the skill, just so you have some capital. Don't get cute with it.
And
before we move on, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and that's if you have been around the market and you've experienced this for a little while. If you're still like within your first 6 months getting in this space, or I would even say 9 to 12 months, if you're still within your first year, I wouldn't even get cute with it. That's the easiest time to get caught out of position and get caught with your pants down. All right. Just sit tight. Don't do anything. All right. If you've been in here for less than a year, sit tight. Don't do anything. Unless, you want to have a consultation with somebody or something like that, then, maybe do more research and really focus and develop a strategy. But if you're just doing it based off of emotion, you're going to get caught with your pants down. If you're going to swing trade, try to trade up, look for that sort of thing. Make sure you're doing due diligent research, like your own due diligent research. That was the only thing I had to add there, Jay.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what the Telegram chat, that's what the community is for, right? If you're somebody who's still a little bit green behind the ears, go and collaborate with your fellow degenerates in our Telegram. Right? Bounce ideas off of each other. This is how you practice the skill. Because otherwise, like Josh said, if you have no skill when it comes to swing trading, you better just sit tight, because that's a damn good way for you to get out of position. So good comments there, Josh. Before we move on to Ethereum, let's go ahead and we had a whole bunch more people rolling in here. So let's hi to the rest of the chat. Daddy Hexler, hey, good to see you again. He was in the chat last evening. Wagwan, my friend. Glad that you're liking the show. And we have a super chat from the Herc with the ZAR 39.99. Although I don't know what currency that is from. We certainly appreciate the donation, brother. No matter if it's ZAR, if it's USD, what have you. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, my friend. Let's see who else is rolling in here. Moonpilled Rational Optics. Glad to see you, my friend. Paul Sachs. Hello, senor. And Alex Santos. He says, like the video. Like the damn video, guys. Right? All this alphabet information we're giving out here is free. Right? So the least you can do for us is like, comment, subscribe, share it with your families. Let's see who else we got rolling in here. Do we have anybody else that we missed? Bradley. The smart ass comment. Nah, guys. We are all going to zero. And then the Bull, glad to see you here, my friend. But it looks like that's it for the chats. Although I see here our guy, Mr. Will Stevenson, probably up in a tower somewhere saying hi to the gang during our stream. Oh, damn, bro. Okay. I thought that was it, but we have a lot more people rolling in. Colonel Giggles, glad to see you back and healthy. Danny Boy. Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification, Danny Boy. He said that South African ZAR. So thank you, Danny Boy, for that. And then the Arbiter of Truth has arrived. Maybe he has some insight for us on the market. So, okay. So it seems like we've caught up with the chat. Let's go ahead and roll into the analysis for Ethereum, because Ethereum looks like it's about to crack 3,200. At the same time, Bitcoin is looking like it's about to crack 55, because right now it's at 48,869. So let's go ahead and get this Ethereum chart up and running. Give me 1 second here, folks. Let me share the screen. Let me know if you folks could see this right here. Good to go?
Yep. Good to go.
Wonderful. Okay, so Ethereum, like I alluded to earlier, is once again in lockstep with Bitcoin. Also in day 34 of its cycle, also a new cycle high on day 34. So what can we expect? You know what? We're gonna go ahead and do the exact same thing for Ethereum, right? We're gonna give the bulls and the bears their due. Let's go ahead and start with the bears. What can we expect Ethereum if we are to expect a bearish retracement? What are some of the price targets that we are looking at? Well, the thing that I like about Ethereum, and I've been pretty vocal about this Ethereum chart for a while, is that because there is a lot less manipulation going on with the Ethereum chart, you have a lot less scam wicks to the upside or to the downside. The pattern here is a lot clearer, right? So for Ethereum, it obviously looks like you have a impulsive move to the upside. To start the wave 3, you have 1, 2, 3 in, 4 in, into 5, right? And so this looks like your ABC corrective move to the downside, and it looks like Ethereum is wanting to continue the trend to the upside. However, like I said, to give the bears their due, this could be, instead of your 5 coming in here, this could potentially be your 5 looking to come in, your 4 in here, and your 3 up here. Right? So if this is indeed the Elliott wave pattern that we are seeing, although unlikely because you can see how shallow this wave 2 move is, but once again, we can give the bears their due. What is the lowest and most bearish possible scenario that we can expect out of Ethereum? Well, if we take a fib retracement from the start of our move, assuming that this area of $3,200, well, $31.95, is where this wave 5 tops out, you can expect the wave 2 to retrace same targets anywhere between this area of 0.5 to 0.786. So at the minimum, we're looking for Ethereum to retrace back down to 2,300 and some change, 2,364, to as low as $1,886. Right? If Bitcoin was to play out the super bearish scenario, then you can expect Ethereum to follow suit, and you're going to see these prices below sub $2,000 Ethereum once again. Now, like I said, very unlikely. Why? The bears are going to have to contend with all of this chunk of price action that has occurred over the past few months for Ethereum in order for you to get that significant of a dip, right? Further, you have a ton of horizontals here serving as support for Ethereum. And so really, when it comes to Bitcoin or Ethereum, the bears have their work cut out for them, right? But as I mentioned, you always have to consider every single possibility. And this right here, my friends, if Bitcoin takes a dump on us, this scenario of sub $2,000 Ethereum is certainly still in play. It's a very low probability, but it is a possibility nonetheless, right? And so that is my super bearish scenario for Ethereum. What's more reasonable? Well, the more reasonable scenario is that you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already in, ABC, corrective. This is a zigzag to the downside. And what can we expect out of a more reasonable correction for Ethereum? Well, here's the thing. If Ethereum were to start correcting now, we would have to consider on a smaller degree this Elliott wave sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the reason why I think this is very unlikely is because at the minimum, you expect a retracement of a 382 retracement to the downside. And if you can see here, Ethereum hasn't even retraced to the 236 level. Let's say you pull the wave 4 there, price hasn't retraced to the 236 level. Let's say you pull it here. Let's say this is your 1, 2, 3 here. We retrace to the 236 level, right? But this is a rare occurrence. What you would expect is a minimum retracement of to the 382 for a wave 4. And so looking at it from a broader perspective, right? This still looks like a 1, 2, 3 still trying to come in. 4 yet to come in, and 5 yet to come in, right? So because of how this structure has played out, because of the lack of weakness when it comes to the price of Ethereum, I think we still have a little bit more room to go to the upside, right? But like I said, let's say this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already in. What can we expect for a more reasonable bearish scenario for Ethereum in terms of price? Simple. Take a fib from our swing low here to our current high. Then your targets become anywhere between this 0.5 to 0.786 level, between $2,700 and $2,400. All right. If this move has indeed played out, and we are going to head into a correction on the latter half of this 60-day cycle for Ethereum, then a reasonable correction to expect would be between $2,700 and $2,400. Right. This 0.5 fib here lines up pretty nicely with some horizontals, which is this cycle high here, our last cycle high for Ethereum. Right? So you have some horizontals there serving as support. Now, because we are really bullish and we have a right translated cycle for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, I am going to maintain my stance that we are going to have a very muted retracement before the halving. And so my first targets, right, if I was to take profits, my first entry point would be somewhere around $2,800 for Ethereum, right? I'm expecting a very muted retracement because of how strong this move has been to the upside, the lack of weakness. And so this area here of 2,800, assuming this is where we top out, is where I'm going to look as a initial entry point back into the market once I have taken some profits, right? But these are more your reasonable areas for retracement when it comes to the Ethereum, right? A very muted retracement around 2,800, a more reasonable retracement, right? You're looking anywhere between 27 to 24. And the super bearish retracement, right? If Bitcoin were to take a dump, is once again, you're going to get sub $2,000 Ethereum around $1,900. Okay? So those are your bearish targets to the downside. Now, what are your bullish targets? This one's also fairly simple. Just like with Bitcoin, I have a band of resistance here drawn up for Ethereum. The first area being this $3,300, and so 3,347. And the reason why I have the upward targets around the bottom of this range around $3,300, is because if you take a retracement, a fib retracement from the top of our all-time high to our bear market low, you can see that the 0.618 fib lines up pretty well with the bottom of that range at $3,350 flat. Okay? Bitcoin already cracked this 0.68 fib. If you remember, I mentioned that the next level of resistance for Bitcoin was its 0.786 fib. Ethereum, on the other hand, still has not reclaimed this 0.618 fib, which is why I'm aiming for a minimum target for this move of around $3,300 for Ethereum before we start getting some rejection there. Okay, what's the more bullish scenario? Well, if prices punch right through $3,300, then I expect Ethereum to start getting some resistance around this $3,600 area. And the reason why I have the $3,600 area as a potential heavy resistance for Ethereum, you can see it a little bit better here on the monthly time frame. Right? If you look at the monthly time frame for Ethereum, you can see that the very top of these monthly candles sits at around 33, but you see we have these wicks and these gaps to fill in between before we have the body of this candle here for the monthly close. So it's a little bit easier to see why this top range for Ethereum is probably going to be your next area of resistance. If price manages to just punch right through $3,300, expect Ethereum to start getting heavy resistance around $3,600, right? $3,600 to $3,700, right? Because this is where the gap in these monthly candles occur. And if price moves past $3,300, there is a tendency for not just Ethereum, but price in general to try and fill these gaps. Okay, so those are your upwards target for Ethereum during the latter half of this 60-day cycle. 3,300 minimum, that's my minimum target, all the way up to $3,700. Right? And man, just look at how beautiful this chart is, bro. Look at this absolutely beautiful engulfing candle for February. Just completely engulfing this month of negative price action. So Ethereum certainly is in a more bullish trend than Bitcoin, but we'll see what happens during the latter half of this cycle. I'm going to once again throw it back to the panel and get their thoughts, their questions, their concerns, their insight on the Ethereum chart.
I mean, it looks great. I mean, I'm digging the price levels, but I think, you know, as you showed those price levels, that means Ethereum's got more room to run for percent gains over Bitcoin, which falls into the same, you know, theory that most people are going to rotate into what's been lagging. And still, with these moves, Ethereum is still about 67 or 65% under a percentage less than since January 1st, since the, you know, which we all consider kind of January 1st of 2023, the beginning of that bull run. So during that massive move, Ethereum's the lagger. So it makes more sense to rotate into Ethereum. I love your fib levels look solid. You're using that, you're combining that with also the support lines and in theory. So I love how you're consolidating this a lot, Jay. It's really simplifying it for a lot of people. But as far as to me, you're taking all the TA, you're slapping it on there so people can see it, but now we can throw the macros and the dates and what's coming on top of it, and then it starts to paint a high probability of what's going to transpire and play out, which is what I like. So I'm more bullish on Ethereum. Personally, I was one of the people that when that Bitcoin announcement happened on GPT, I dumped everything in Bitcoin, rotated straight into Ethereum on that day. I didn't even think twice about it because it's just from a simple fact. It's the lagger. It's the cheaper of the two. Why would I not make that move? Bitcoin's going to get all the, you know, all the hype, and that's cool. But as you saw it, since then, you know, traditional money still rotating in. The massive wells that are moving into Ethereum are pumping into that. Thus, I still feel strongly on Ethereum, and I'm just hoping it translates into a strong altcoin season before, you know, the halving kicks in. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. But outside of that, it looks pretty solid to me, man. Good job.
Yeah, you know, with my analysis, it might seem like a lot's going on, but I keep my indicators fairly simple, right? I use horizontal support and resistance. I use the 60-day cycles. I use Fibonacci. I use trend lines, like so with Elliott Wave as well. So those are there. I use very few things, right? It's just I try to give the people a holistic view of the market, and so I try to combine those to potentially see how much confluence is there pointing us in a certain direction, right? But yeah, thank you for that, Tracker. Dace, I know you said that you had some things to get to, meetings, calls to get to. Do you have any last thoughts for the panel and for the chat before you head out, brother?
I don't, man. My only thoughts, again, like Tracker said, great job breaking it down. It's interesting scaling. You know, you gave sort of a box. You gave a upwards target box for Ethereum, and if you extrapolate that ratio on your ETH/BTC ratio, that can also forecast some of your price targets for BTC as well. And so that is another reason why it kind of looked to me like Tracker said, like we all kind of agree, Ethereum still has room to run at this moment, which it has been. If you bought Ethereum when we started streaming, you're up 2%, and so. I will leave it there. Please hop in the Telegram. There's the link is in the chat. We'll be doing Telegram Tuesday call tomorrow, just like we do every Tuesday. I host that, and as many of these guys that can come on that are able, they do. A lot of times we have Mr. Will Stevenson in there when he can make it as well. Will, I saw you hopped in here in the chat. It's good to see you. But yeah, that's about it, y'all. It's always a pleasure to be on here. Glad to be on YouTube again. It's some sort of rare for me. Hopefully it will become less and less rare as we go. But yeah, thanks for having me, brother. It's a pleasure as always, guys. Have a good one.
You too, man. Take care.
Take care, brother. Pleasure's ours. All right, and then there were two. So before we close it out here, what was that, brother?
It's all good.
Yeah, so before we close it out here, we're gonna open up the floor for questions and some, you know, just like light banter between me and Tracker, because I know he had some thoughts in terms of how the overall political atmosphere might affect our current market. But, you know, just to finish kind of the technicals, Dre has a very, very, very good comment here. And he mentions that the God Whale set limit orders at around $3,200 and $3,500 Ethereum. Now, that is a very good observation by Dre. This is something that I was not able to share yesterday because we went a little long on our Sunday live stream. But to Dre's point, I have here the Uniswap V3 pool information. Okay, so here's going to be a very good visual representation of where this market is heading in terms of Ethereum. All right, so if I could share my screen here real quick. Uniswap.info. This is a very useful site when you want to learn where people are setting their orders. What positions are they creating within liquidity pools? I mentioned this a few times, but if you would like to learn more about providing liquidity, the ins and outs and the nuances of liquidity providing, and how you can use it to your advantage, go ahead and go over to our good friend Crypto Sloth's channel. He has a very, very nice package. When it clip that, he has a very nice playlist of videos explaining liquidity providing and all of its nuances. Very clear, very concise, very short. Right? It's not a very, very extensive playlist. Probably anywhere between 10 minutes or so between each video. But everything that I learned about liquidity, I learned from Sloth. So, and he gave it for free. So you guys might as well go ahead and check that out. So if you go over here to uniswap.info.org, you go to the pools token, pools tab. Let's go ahead and search for Ethereum. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you the list of pools that have the most amount of liquidity for Ethereum. You can see here, this pair of WBTC and Ethereum have $321 million in total value locked within that pool. The next largest pool, which is the one that we are going to watch, is this Ethereum USDC pair, which has $163 million in TVL. Right? Why is this so useful? Well, you could go to the liquidity tab and you can see where people are setting their positions. Take a look, right? You could see here that we have already bypassed this large wall of positions when it comes to Ethereum, right? That means at these prices, you had a ton of people setting their positions at these prices, which means when Ethereum in USDC terms moved to these prices, the pool started selling them out of their positions. We have now moved past this great wall of China, and we are now within this area of orders, right? And you can see here as we go further and further and further to the left, the amount of positions set at this range has now become lower and lower and lower, right? So when it comes to the US dollar valuation of Ethereum, there are a lot less orders set here to absorb Ethereum at higher prices, which means that Ethereum in USDC terms is not going to have a much difficult time getting higher because there are less people willing to sell at these positions, right? At these levels, right? For example, like compared here to where you had like these bars represent about $235,000 worth of USDC, you have a lot less here, right? And so look at this, right? You have 23 ETH, 23, 23, 22. Which means when price in USDC terms goes up to around $3,500 Ethereum, there is a lot less people with orders here, right? So Ethereum now has a potential to move up to these levels without having much resistance. Okay, so this is why learning about liquidity, learning what positions people are in when it comes to the V3 liquidity pools is very useful, right? Because now you can see that there's not a lot of resistance here in terms of the move up, right? We've already passed this large order of this large chunk of positions. So just something to consider, right? It's a useful little tool to learn, right? It's a good concept to learn because it's just another one of those things that you could add into your back pocket when considering what moves you might make in this market. So
Hey, Jay, just to add to that, for folks that are in the traditional markets, you can consider the TVL. You're looking at a total value locked. You can look at this as the same as the order books for options trading on puts and calls. It helps, help with where your walls are and where your resistances are as far as traditional markets.
Yeah, exactly. Those walls are basically, imagine them as support resistance lines, right? Once they have broken through, you can see, oh, there's not a lot of resistance left on the move to the upside, right? So just something to consider, right? It's just another tool to add to your toolbox. With that being said, so that's it for all the boring chart stuff. Tracker, I want to open it up to you, my friend, and open it up to the chat if they had any questions. But I know you wanted to discuss the potential implications of what the political sphere, the political landscape might have, right? Their effects on the crypto market as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to you, my friend.
Yeah, sure. And I don't want to get too political here on either. So, but and to go back what you just said, I mean, honestly, the boring stuff that people I think is boring, that's where all the money's at. I mean, there's a reason why, I know there's cute little terms, but basically, yeah, the boring stuff, or the money's in the details. Basically, that's the riches are in the niches. Basically, is how I like to say it. So yeah, man, and not boring stuff. It's spot on, good stuff. It helps reiterate, what we could potentially see with a flashlight in the dark. Yeah. So going to the political landscape, I feel like, I guess my 2 cents, and I'm sure people will disagree or agree, whatever. I don't really care. But my 2 cents are this. I don't think it really matters who wins. Don't get me wrong. We all have our own prejudgments of who we think should win at the presidential election. We all have our own skin in the game. We all think, obviously things are going horribly bad now. Obviously, I think we all agree on that. But I don't think as far as the adoption of crypto or the evolution of crypto is going to matter who or else gets elected. I just don't think it happening. There's part of
Ooh, we lost you there, Tracker.
win or win out because, yeah, man.
Yeah, we lost
I'm
you.
here.
So,
Can you hear me?
yep. Yeah, we lost you for a little bit there.
Yeah,
so if you just go back a little bit.
All right, sure. So I don't think it matters who's actually going to get elected as far as the landscape of crypto. I think, there's part of me who feels like they're going to, Trump's going to pretty much win. And here's why I'm thinking, because it makes more sense to allow that happen, because most of the people who are already in technology, at least in the mainstream media, are more willing to adapt to what's changing and coming, because they watch the evening news, they follow along, they know it's more plugged in, and there's going to be less resistance there. I think more in the Trump camp, at the side of the house, there's more anti-mainstream establishments, and the narratives being pushed, so they're not going to buy into any of that. But what they will listen to is what he has to say. So if he gets in there, and he's already alluded to it, NFTs have come out. He's already said he'd be very pro. He's already said he would be leaning towards pro crypto in some of the comments he's had. So I think, if he gets elected, I think it's going to cause a much more adoption, speeding up the process. But the problem that we all need to think about is it's a love-hate relationship, in the sense that we want crypto to be adopted for, to pump our bags, more or less. But at the same time, it's a power shift where it will lead into CBDCs. CBDCs have a bad, taste in everyone's mouth, and everyone's anti that. They're going to come out and rebrand it some other way. But this is coming. So we all need to be very aware of when it happens. After the elections, I feel like it's going to lead into this. Pump up goes into the narrative where the Bitcoin halvening run up to where it's typically a year, roughly about a year after the halvening, is where our ultimate top is going to occur. Whether it happens or not, the last 3 times says it will. It's to be determined. But it would make sense, because that would be after the election year. That would go into, the power shift in January, and that would lead into around that first Q1 of 2025, leaning towards that top period where you could see things really get ugly. The traditional markets are way overbought. They're ridiculously overbought. The debt market is all-time high. I mean, there's a lot of narratives to have a catastrophic dump on everybody. So I'm thinking, no matter what transpires, don't pay attention to what the mainstream's telling you. Pay attention to what they're saying, but don't follow it by any means. But be prepared that at the end of this, towards the end of the cycle, that you need to start taking some profits and being careful. I don't like to say non-financial advice. I will certainly be doing that, because I'm not giving back gains after all this just to watch it tank again. Typically, when it's your first time going into crypto, you sit there, you have this run up, then you get absolutely destroyed to the bottom. Then you have to go through a whole nother cycle to try to get yourself out of that. So I think what we're trying to do here is trying to help shed some lights on the past. You got to know where you've come from and where you're going to go. I know I've kind of rambled on a lot of things here, but to me, I can see that narrative absolutely playing out. And I'd like to get your thoughts there, Jay, and anybody else would like to talk about it.
Well, so I agree with you that regardless of who wins, whether it's a Democrat or whether it's a Republican that wins, no matter which side of the aisle you fall into, you have to realize that the big players within this market, the BlackRocks, the Fidelities, they have relationships with both sides of the aisle, right? So whether it's a Republican or a Democrat that wins, you can guarantee that they're probably going to try and push for regulation that's going to benefit them. So I agree with you there, right? Regardless of who wins, the big players are going to try and push for regulation that benefits them. However, I would still like a Republican candidate to win because we know that makes it much more likely that you're going to place people in positions of power that are going to be very pro-crypto, right? If Trump wins, it's a higher likelihood that if he doesn't put Ramaswamy or he doesn't put DeSantis as his VP, he's going to probably put either of those two in a position where they can influence what happens with the regulation, right? And if it's Ramaswamy sitting in the VP seat, or maybe he takes a position in his cabinet and he makes him the head of like blockchain technology or crypto or what have you, that makes it much more likely that we get even more favorable legislation in place for crypto, right? That's not just going to benefit the big people, right? That's going to benefit everybody else in the space as well. And so that's my initial thoughts on it. That yes, I don't think that whether even if Biden was to somehow get reelected, right? I don't think that's going to put too much of a headwind in terms of proper regulation being pushed forward. But I certainly do hope that it's somebody on the Republican side that wins, just because you're going to have a lot more people being placed in positions of power and authority that are going to be more pro crypto, right? It's like there's very little chance that you're going to have Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, head the crypto division if Donald Trump is reelected as number 47. So.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think ultimately what I'm trying to explain to everybody to keep your eyes on what's going to happen and transpire, because after this happens, is there anything being done to take the power away from the central banks? Probably not. It's probably going to speed up and get worse. That's the problem. The central banks have all the power. Thus, they're going to push for CBCs or whatever they want to brand it. They'll call it whatever, whatever they want to try to make it look, so you can consume it. Just saying, watch who's giving the power to central banks and what's happening. And I don't think it really matters who's going to do it. I think central banks run the show, and unfortunately, that's what people need to be paying attention to. Certainly, going into the elections and after the elections, at least here in the U.S. And what they ever said, I mean, even over in the EU, you be careful over in the EU. I mean, they just changed that. I know some people were putting it out there, and I was looking at that about how the regulations on the data sharing and how they were going to start regulating data and how it transfers across over in Europe. So that's another thing. I mean, you're seeing these power shifts all over the place. Just saying, keep your eyes aware of what's going on. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we always let folks know here at the Roundtable. You always have to keep your fingers on the pulse of the market, right? Don't get too trapped in one narrative, because there's a lot of things going on here. There's an infinite number of variables that you could possibly not account for. So it's good to be educated across multiple disciplines and multiple outlets, right? So that you don't get caught in that echo chamber and you get caught with your pants down. But with that being said, let's go and double check here in the chat. I have some pretty good comments here. Paul Sachs, he's asking if we've already talked about the move, the Pulse X SAC OA has been moving today. Yeah, so Jeff brought that up earlier. So apparently the OA has taken some of the funds from the Sacrifice wallet and is now yielding in Aave. So the theory is it might play out the exact same way that we saw the first time it happened, right? The OA, after he's done yielding in Aave, might provide liquidity in some pools, or just might wash out more of the weak hands. So that's exciting. It's always good and exciting to see when the OA makes a move, right? Because up until this point, right, it has acted as a benevolent entity. It has not done anything to hurt the price of Pulse X, Pulse Chain, or Hex. It has only made moves to benefit the ecosystem and the community. So, but yeah, aside from that, Senior Tracker, I think we should close it out here. Do you have any final comments and concerns, insights for the chat?
No, not anything. But the only thing that I would love to see play out is after the halving happens, things, it's kind of a sea of red in the crypto markets, and yet then the OA starts putting that capital to use, and then everybody's got to stare and look at those bubbles where they see all of RH's coins being nice and green while everybody else is in the red. I think would be amazing marketing, but that's to be determined. But I love to see that outcome. But no, after that, man, I think we can close it.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Well, like I said in the beginning of the chat, brother, very nice that you could finally join us once again live on stream. Like with Dace, don't sleep on Tracker, guys. He is working on something in the background that I think all of our members are going to be ecstatic once he actually decides to release it out there for you folks to consume. As always, we would like to thank you if you are joining us here during a live stream or you're going to be watching us on the replay. I know we went over a lot of data here, so please go back, rewatch, take your time, take notes. We gave very specific price targets for you to consider, both for both the bears and the bulls. So hopefully you got some value out of it. As always, thank you for joining us here on stream. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and we do appreciate that you spend some of that time here with us. As always, you can find me on X at _P90Hex, on Instagram at agent_J Schroth. And if you have not already done so, please go ahead, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you would like to get more of this alpha, we have a Telegram chat that's free to join for now. So go ahead and jump in there and become part of a community that is thriving. It's growing, filled with guys and gals who are not afraid to share their knowledge and wisdom with you, whether you are a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced player within this market. There's going to be something for you there. So once again, thank you for joining us. We will see you on the next stream. And like always, degen responsibly. Take care.